PlayerUnknown's Battlegrounds peaked with player numbers of over 3 million in January of 2018 and hasn't been defeated since, despite the overnight successes of Palworld and Black Myth Wukong. Now, I've always believed and still believe that Monster Hunter Wilds has a very real opportunity to break every single Steam record within its first week of release, and I have a lot of data to back that up. Now, I'll go over all the different statistics and reasons I think Monster Hunter Wilds is one of the greatest games ever made, but also the one thing that could hold them back from achieving their destiny, at least temporarily. The first thing we need to look at is the Monster Hunter World stats here. We can see that back in January of 2020, they hit a peak of 300,000 players. And then also in December of 2023, it ramped up and went to 160,000. What you don't realize is that Iceborne was actually sitting in a different zone here. I believe it was in 2021 or 2020. This game is a very old game, we all know that, but we're going to return to this a little bit later in the video. It's also worth noting that this game was released on PC 6 months after it was put out on consoles first. That's why I actually never played it on the PC. I do want to buy it at some point if I ever have enough free time, but I never bought it because I had it on the PlayStation because I wanted to play it the moment it came out. I am a big Monster Hunter fan. As we go to the Monster Hunter Rise stats, which actually came out on PC 12 months after the Switch and other consoles and things like that, its all-time peak was 230,000, so not nearly as high as World, but every second game typically does a little bit better because they're more the mainline games, and Rise is not one of those, but I hear it's a fantastic game, people really loved it. I think it was just really more popular on things like the consoles and stuff rather than on the PC itself. And if we compare it to the very top game on the Steam charts, we've got PlayerUnknown's Battlegrounds. Soon after it released in January of 2018, it peaked at 3.2 million players. Since then, it hasn't really seen the same play numbers, but at the same time, being even 800,000 concurrents right this moment is really huge. And I think that even if Monster Hunter Wilds doesn't break this 3 million mark, I think it will have a consistent 500-600k players indefinitely into the future. I think it's going to be one of those games that's a mainstay for a very, very long time. I'll talk about that in a minute. Now, one of the big differences we do need to recognize here is that PlayerUnknown's Battlegrounds started at approximately $40 USD, and Monster Hunter Wilds is going to be released at $70. Palworld, which is another one of those charts, and Black Myth Wukong were also $40 USD, and so Monster Hunter Wilds does have a bit of an uphill battle here. But even if it doesn't peak out straight away, I definitely think with a big DLC or something, it could reach those numbers very easily. But there's more I want to talk about. The other thing is Asmongold. Now, you don't have to like his content. You can think whatever you want about him, but it's worth considering that his I Tried Monster Hunter World video, which was him trying the game for the very first time, has had about 1.9 million views since December of 2023. Let's have a look at the first few seconds of this.
All right, gentlemen. Let's get to work. Y'all ready? Is it time?
It is.
All right, let's fucking go.
As he went into the first sections of this game, he played out, he fought a bunch of different monsters, the Jagras, he fought an Anjanath at one point, and clearly he really enjoyed the game, and his chat really loved it, and everyone got around it, but he made this video 5 years.
Now's your chance to deal.
5 years after Monster Hunter World came out. However, let's return back to the Monster Hunter World chart. Look at this right here on December of 2023. It jumped back up to 160k, almost smashing its previous record. Again, 5-6 years after the game initially released. Let me just say that one more time. It came up to 200,000, almost 200,000 players 5 years after the game initially released, likely just because of Asmongold. Now, I'm sure a billion people are going to tell me in the comments that some other stuff came out. I think they might have had some major updates around this time, but nothing too crazy. I believe that Asmongold encouraged a lot of people, and it became semi-viral on things like Twitter, Reddit, and all the rest of it. and then a lot of more people went back to Monster Hunter World to give it a try. I know my brother even did, and he's a big, he watches other streamers. I don't think he watches too much Asmongold, but he's a really big gamer, okay? And him going back to it is definitely saying something. So, why is this important for Monster Hunter Wilds? Now, he is now a big advocate for the series, so you bet he's going to be playing on day one, which automatically pushes us over the Monster Hunter World record, although we actually already beat it. I'll tell you about that in a minute. He has a massive following, but more importantly, when content creators like Asmongold and others start to jump onto this, it becomes trending amongst all of the Twitch streamers. I believe pretty much all of them are going to be playing it. Some of them paid, most of them not. And that's going to create a huge wave of people playing this game that it hasn't been like that for any past releases in the Monster Hunter series. This time, it also won't be years after the game's release. Everyone will be playing this thing on day one, okay? This is the exact same playbook that occurred on Palworld and PlayerUnknown's Battlegrounds. One creator got onto it, really enjoyed it, others tried it, then they enjoyed the game and so they kept playing, and then everyone jumped onto the bandwagon all at the same time. This is exactly what is going to happen with Monster Hunter Wilds, which means it is going to defeat the 1 million player mark at a minimum. However, that is not the entire story here. After that, we can have a look at the Monster Hunter Wilds beta stats, okay? We can see that for the very first beta in November of 2024, it peaked out at almost 500,000 players, which actually breaks the Monster Hunter World record. Not only that, but it was on the PlayStation and Xbox as well, so this is actually a pretty good indicator of the PC player base. Like, if it was just available on PC, then this data wouldn't be as useful, but I believe most players probably played it on consoles and not even on PC, which says a lot. Now, you could say that everyone who's interested in Monster Hunter would be playing the beta, and so maybe this is kind of the peak player base was going to have. It's dropped off later on, but people don't necessarily want to replay. It had a lot of the same features. A lot of people don't really want to replay the beta. The hardcore fans definitely will. I definitely did, but not everyone does. But I think that's half the story. People aren't interested in beta. They're just waiting for the game to release. When it happens, when everyone starts talking about it, that's when they're interested in the game. And a lot of people are like, well, I could download this 50 gigabyte thing onto my PC, or I could watch a streamer do it for a few hours, and I'm good. I'm ready to wait for the game's main release. Despite it being free, people just don't have the patience for it. They're just waiting for the game to come out. I don't think this is the true story of just how many players are going to come into this game. It also had limited accessible playtime, which hampers concurrent player bases, right? So everyone jumps on in the first second, and then if people play later on throughout the weekend, everyone's already played everything they want to in the first 2 or 3 hours, and so they're not playing anymore. And so although the total players might actually be really, really high, the concurrent players definitely won't be as high in this case. And now I want to talk about the game's mechanics and some of the things that makes it so great. Now, Monster Hunter Wilds is not as fast as Rise, but it is much faster than Monster Hunter World. I don't know if this is for better or for worse, to be honest, but I think for the most part, there are tons of quality of life improvements, which is really the main thing that's being added to the game to speed it up, rather than actually changing the fundamentals of the way you play. Things like you don't need to carve a tail, everyone was going to do it anyways. The Psychrote Mount means it's way faster to get back into the action, and other quality of life things like being able to just hunt a monster in the open world easily without having to go through all this extra hassle and starting quests and things like that. The game is so much more fluid now that it's going to keep people playing not only like more and enjoy the game more, but it's going to keep them playing for longer at any given time. There's not as many natural break points like in something with Monster Hunter World where you complete a quest, wait 30 seconds, go back to base camp, do all your gear and stuff like that. And then maybe like, oh, that's a natural stopping point. I'm going to stop for today. I'm going to come back tomorrow. Monster Hunter Wilds isn't really so much like that. You do a quest, you fight a monster, you go and fight the next one right next to it, or you're fighting 2 or 3 at once, or you just start running around the map fighting monsters. That's definitely a big way I'm going to play the game. And it, like outside of the story quest line, this is going to increase retention for the game as a whole. Now, the other thing is it's going to be way easier to play solo or with other players. this adds less reliance on having friends playing the game to make sure you get the most out of it, which I think is a big problem with general MMOs. I know Monster Hunter isn't an MMO, but in Monster Hunter World, there are a lot of endgame quests where you really need to be playing with other players to get the most out of it, but they've eliminated some of that with Monster Hunter Wilds, and it's going to be a lot more accessible, especially in the earlier parts of the game, and even with more difficult monsters, you can call the AI hunters, and I played with them in the beta, and they do a really good job. The other things are that the environments enhance replayability with the different ecologies changing and the lightning storms coming through, and the I can't remember all the names of the different things that happen in the game, but we have the bright skies, the rain, the darkness, whatever. It's all really good and increases the replayability of the game. And the game locations and maps are way larger than anything we've seen in World. That first map, I believe, was larger than like half the world's maps combined, and is one of many that are going to be in Monster Hunter Wilds. Apart from that, everything in Monster Hunter Wilds is also way more polished than it has been in past titles. Everything feels good, all the damage numbers, all the weapons feel great, all the focus mode makes the game so much easier to access for players that aren't used to this style of game, because really Monster Hunter in general is unlike games that many players have played, and after the Asmongold streams and things like that, they've come to enjoy it and appreciate it a lot more, and a lot more players are getting into the series, and now Monster Hunter Wilds is going to be that one last push over the edge to bring it and make it mainstream. Now, I know people probably don't want it to be mainstream, but I know that Capcom's still going to stick true to what they believe in, and it being mainstream won't be so bad, but everything I've said means Monster Hunter Wilds has had the literal perfect storm to become the top game in the history of Steam. And I still think that's very possible, but it honestly has a much harder road than it should. The first big issue is that the game's optimization is pretty horrible. It needs a really powerful hardware to run at 60 frames per second, like a 2080, which is not an easy thing to come by, and things that the majority of players don't actually have sitting on their desk at home. Now, it could also see a much bigger player base on console than on Steam, because it looks like it's been optimized for console a little bit better with all the AI tech that goes in things like the PS5 and the PS5 Pro and stuff like that. But that is something that isn't the same as many other games on the chart. Palworld was really big on PC for a reason, PUBG as well, and so it's going to have diminishing returns on Steam because it's going to be a really popular game to play on console, especially with things like cross-play and cross-progression, sorry. And so even though I think it's still going to be one of the most popular games of all time, it might not be reflected in the Steam charts necessarily. Another thing is that visually, although it looks incredible, especially on top hardware, it's not quite there when it comes to lower tier hardware. If you compared a PC with something like a 2060 in it, trying to get 60 frames, World is going to look better on that PC, that mid-tier PC, than Wilds actually is going to look like, which is honestly a bit unfortunate. I really hope that they got these optimization, textures, and graphics really down pat, but I think that that's going to come in the next release. This will harm the potential success for Monster Hunter Wilds. However, the next Monster Hunter mainline game will remedy all of this and be quite literal perfection. I hope you learned something today, and if you want to see what other ways games are messing up in the industry, check out the video all about the outdated cliches in gaming, and it even showcases how Monster Hunter Wilds has avoided so many of these cliches successfully.